Andiamo avanti con le esperienze aziendali con Cristina Bombassei.
Now we go on with Cristina Bombassei, CSR officer and member of the board of Gruppo Brembo, and with Roberto Sancinelli, president of Montello. Welcome, both of you. Sabine Stuiver, co-founder and chief marketing officer of Hydraloop. Michele Viglianisi, responsible of biorefining and supply of ENG, sustainable via mobility. Thank you and welcome. We should also have connected with us Mirja Cartia AD of my group, the group of Sole 24 Ore, and Agostino Rebaudengo, president of Asja, Ambiente and Elettricità, Futura. They're both there, so ready, steady, go. Cristina Bombassei, CSR, chief of this function since 2013, so it's not a novel idea that Brembo had to deal with sustainability. In your sustainability report, for example, you report that your emissions have been cut by 16%, renewable sources of energy amount for nearly 70% of your overall energy requirement, net zero should be achieved in 2040. In 3 countries, you have 100% of renewable sources of energy, so maybe we should mention that. But if someone asked you, what do you think better represents Brembo's sustainability, the figure you like to quote, what is it? Well, first of all, good morning, and since I'm the first person to speak in this panel, I would like to thank President Elettricità, Confindustria, and San Patrignano for hosting and welcoming us in this wonderful place. Wholehearted thanks. Now, in sustainability, ESG, of course, everything is important, but tending to net zero is an important responsibility for us. So I'd say those are the most challenging targets, just like the 2030 agenda, the 17 goals of the ESG list of goals, and our people, our resources. So we have a publication, 120 pages, which we have recently published on our website, and a few hundred indicators which sum up what we have been doing. Well, you work in a sector which is very much at risk, one of the sector undergoing the most obvious changes, i.e. The car industry, although so what is changing for you in terms of products, bearing in mind also the needs of manufacturers downstream? Well, of course, our sector is really changing. We make brakes, and there are brakes also in electrical cars, thanks God. So we know that we will be protagonists of the change, but we also know that we will have time to do that. We have always devoted 6% of our turnover to R&D, 10% of our resources are focused on that. Near Stanford, near San Francisco, we have launched an inspiration lab to study the future macro trends, not only for automotive transition, but in general, transition of new sociality for young people and other transitions ahead of us in the future, such as, for example, environmental transition. So there is an all-encompassing transition or development in this sense. The automotive industry is undergoing change, but Brembo has been focusing on research and in particular on new products, greener products. We manufacture braking systems, so twinning of friction materials, disc and brake systems that are lighter, have a lighter impact on the car. And we've also launched a Sensify, which combines AI and independent braking system for each of the 4 wheels, which you via sensors and the collection of highly detailed set of data and information also allows drivers to drive green, generating fewer carbon emissions, for example. We are energy users. We have foundries. We have verticalized everything from the foundry to the red box, which we distribute and sell. So everything that we do makes it possible for us to achieve those KPIs you have mentioned, which allow us to reach net zero in 2040, i.e. 10 years ahead of the obligation. Well, in our Curno plant, in the 4.0 plan you had developed quite a few years ago, you had substantial investments on connected machines, big data, and, for example, for every item that you sell, it's possible to know the foundry, the temperature, the components used, so that in case of problems, the whole process can be traced back. Compared to the other CSR manager, you have one benefit. You represent the owners, so they listen to you, even in Brembo. But I wanted to ask you whether there is a more complicated area where it is difficult to change procedures, rules, and processes. Well, I find it is perhaps even more important the fact that it's a member of the family to cover this role of CSR officer, not only because they pay more attention to what we say, but because we can convey this culture of sustainability, which is part of our family history. We know that family businesses are more sustainable because there's this far-sightedness of the founders to pass on to the next generation something sustainable that includes sustainability for the local area, the territory, which allowed us to shift from being a family company in 1961, where we were founded, to what we are today, a worldwide group with operations in different countries, different legislations, different cultures. This is a source of wealth and also of complication, of course. But as someone already mentioned in the morning, young people really care about these things. So it comes easily. We provide over 400 hours of training every year on various topics on safety, security, sustainability, and energy. So we provide from the top down some values that we share, but our managers has also assessed on the basis of sustainability targets which we established. But for the 2030 agenda, we asked all our employees throughout the world to participate with videos they take with their smartphones of how they implement the Millennium Development, Sustainable Development Goals in their everyday working life. And then, of course, we view them as a whole. Benassi before mentioned the crucial role of companies in some sectors to, for example, measure emissions, which in some cases is carried out bearing in mind the supply chain. I know of companies which are holding training and education courses which choose suppliers on this basis, and they impose or spur their suppliers to go in that direction. Yes, it is happening, but it's also a sore point because the supply chain sometimes is very long and sometimes it includes SMEs. So if I may add something, in the previous roundtable, you asked what we would like the government to do. Well, I would like the government to help SMEs, and I'm saying this as the president of the technical group, working group on sustainability in Confindustria. We have to understand the goals, the KPIs, and maybe our desire would be a voucher, for example, for setting up a sustainability manager, which is the fifth most demanded skill to have. And despite what Bicocca University is doing, there still is a major need of this. So these are crucial jobs because carrying the whole sector, pushing it forward is sometimes complicated. So we have to try and become partners of our suppliers. The rules are very strict, not only for us who are tier 1 suppliers, but we are asked to guarantee until the smallest, the last manufacturer of whatever piece or element is used. So we can guarantee what we do, but we also have to guarantee what others do. And in turn, we have to establish some minimum requirements for Brembo's suppliers, but we also have third-party certifications. So we monitor, we certify, but it is a virtuous progress where support and it plays a crucial role, and sometimes, making way with them. Now, Mirja Cartia da Zero, Managing Director of our Gruppo, Gruppo 24 Ore. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, thank you. Now, I'd like to start from our latest novelties. The board has recently approved a new industrial plan, and there are two main guidelines for innovation and sustainability. So how do you reconcile these two elements in a world that is radically different? Because we were also mentioning earlier this morning what happened over the last 3-4 years has changed priorities, turned upside down what happened in our world, in energy, but not only. So what to do in this new context? Well, thank you. First and foremost, it is worth pointing out that Gruppo 24 Ore is currently undergoing some change from a publishing group to a tech and multimedia group. And in this context, as you mentioned, the 2023-2026 industrial plan was passed, and of course it revolves around innovation, which has been mentioned time and time again during the morning and during the previous speeches in this panel. So innovation, and the process has actually already started a few years back. All companies sped up, including our group, sped up in conjunction with the pandemic. When the pandemic occurred, we have to change the way we provided our services, and also we had to adopt a technology innovation that would allow us to continue providing information services, professional services, in a digital format, or events, for example, which have moved to digital, such as, for example, Made in Italy was a huge success. Radio 24, the various newsrooms were in a position to keep on providing our services and products in a different way, which led us to think that it can be done, and we have to do it increasingly better. So in this context, that was mentioned by other speakers as well, the multi-crisis context, or perma-crisis, as it was unfortunately renamed with the conflict in Ukraine, the increase in the price of raw material, inflation, cost of living, etc., led more or less all companies to review their business models, including ours, leading us to reassess our most important asset, human capital. So capitalism from a different point of view, inclusive capitalism, as mentioned by the Pope, as mentioned by President Bonomi in the Congress organized by Confindustria a few months back with the Vatican. So industrial humanism, so an inclusive push as the context where companies can and should reconsider their growth and development. So we have realized how important and how profitable it is to find new economic models that are fairer and more inclusive. So what has Gruppo 24 Ore done in this sense? Well, we have done a lot. First of all, the new board of directors, which is not so new because it's already a year old, has 5 women out of its 11 members. Average age has dropped from 56 to 50 years, and it has immediately set up a new body within the board that focuses specifically on ESG, technology innovation, called CESGIT, and the president is also president of Gruppo 24 Ore, is one of your speakers, and she is also sustainability champion, Claudia Parzani. And we have therefore focused our attention on new methods for recruiting, where all skills being equal, diversity inclusion principles get preference. So we had an almost 50-50 presence between men and women, but we tried to incentivize all other conditions being equal, hiring women or young people. The new CFO, which will reach our group in a few days' time, is a woman. We haven't said anything. I haven't given anything away, but that's the direction we're moving into. And what have we done? We have obtained a gender equality certification. We are the first media group to have achieved that, and we're very proud of it. And we have also adopted our ESG plan, the first for our group. These are all stages. They're not final results. In very cases, they are starting points so that we can monitor close up the progress made in this direction. And others have already mentioned that there is a growing focus and attention on this. To do so in a professional way, we have created an ad hoc general directorate for innovation and sustainability, which did not exist before, and whose task it would be to constantly work on improving communication and sustainability, led by Jonathan Tedeschi. Going back to the initial topic, our new industrial plan for 2023 to 2026 revolves around innovation and sustainability from the point of view of digitalization, since we are a publishing group. Another word that, for example, Dr. Bombassei has already mentioned repeatedly is the importance of training. That's something we had left in 2017, something we have gone back to strongly with the services we provide to our stakeholders, but also with internal services, because we have dealt with and are still dealing with the upskilling and reskilling of our labor force, our human capital, in order for them to stay abreast of new technologies. So innovation is the crux of our development, also from a structural point of view. We all know that our children don't read newspapers, and they never will. So maybe we should reconsider who we are in new ways, thinking about new platforms with online reading, podcasts, round-the-clock information. We are working a lot, investing in multimedia platforms that would allow us to attract new segments of the population and younger audience. So a number of platforms with the webinar approach and the social, very important social presence, especially those that are more geared towards the professional sphere. So a model that includes realignment, streamlining of products and services, leading us to innovations that allow us to get in contact with an increasingly young audience. Now, very, very little time, but one more question on our role as providers of information. Of course, we have the changes that you mentioned, sustainability, innovation, how our group is changing, how we're getting prepared for this with our strategy, but then we have to communicate it to the market, to readers. So If you can tell us something in a nutshell about these elements. Well, I already mentioned what we have done within. So what are we doing in terms of products and services? We had a section called Sustainability on our website. We have a dedicated ESG observatory in our study group, and then we have the newsreel of sustainability with our press agency, Radio Corps. We invest in information and award every year the leading company for information. Together with the Holy See, we have set up the sustainable index, sustainability index with ING and Morningstar. And then we have KPIs on lifestyle, considering the standard of living in different Italian cities. And we also assess novelties when it comes to innovation. Radio 24 focuses on smart cities. We have innovation days around the national territory. And then the Trento Festival of Economics, which was very successful last year. And this year is going to be the future of the future, challenges of a new world. This focusing not only on the scientific and academic world, but also to young people. So we are the bedrock of companies in Italy, and the way we are such bedrock is by supporting innovation and sustainability. Thank you very much, Mirja Cartia da Zero, for being connected with us. We have another connection, Agostino Rebaudengo, President of Asja, Ambiente and Elettricità Futura. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me as well. Hello, everybody. And in particular, I'd like to thank Letizia Moratti. Elettricità Futura is the union of Asso Elettrica and Asso Rinnovabili, and this is something that tells us that the world has really changed. So, what is our world, and what are the proposals that you submit to the government, also in light of what has recently happened? Up to a couple of years ago, we took for granted that energy was a commodity. Of course, we always complained about the energy bills, but the prices were taken for granted. They had been stable for a long time, and we discovered that this is not the case. So what are we going to do? Well, this is not the case, as you said. If we go back to the beginning of your introduction, the future of electricity and two associations that have merged. One was an association of companies producing energy from renewable sources, and the other one was an association of companies that produced energy mainly from fossil fuels. So we have decided to join forces. We took our time to do that, and I think we can confidently say 6 years after, I think it was the smart thing to do. As a matter of fact, today, more than ever, we have learned that renewable energy sources represent an enormous opportunity because, of course, they emit less CO2, NOx, and on top of that, we should also consider that given the gas prices, the current gas prices, today the price of gas is at least 3 times higher compared to the 5 years average pre-COVID. So these are also the sources of energy that are the ones that are the most affordable. Also thanks to technology, which has improved in terms of productivity and reduced in terms of capex. That is the cost to produce it compared to 10 years ago. And these are the energy sources that Italy has the most. In the south of Italy we have wind, we have sun, and so compared to the rest of Europe, Of course, with the exception of Spain and Portugal, Italy is the country with the highest amount of sun, if you see what I mean. So our country, Italy, can produce its own energy at a competitive cost at home, so that we can reduce the dependence on imported energy sources. Our association last year, we have talked with Minister Pichetto Fratin and Minister Urs last February. We submitted a plan that covers the next 10 years. It is a plan that Italy should follow. It is a plan according to which the production of renewable energy sources will go up from 35%, the current percentage, to more than 80% by 2030. Chico Testa, the president of Ambiente, this morning said that we buy power panels from China produced with coal energy. We depend on other countries, and this will not be sufficient in order to solve the problem of our energy dependence. Do you agree with this idea? Renewable energy are just a part of it. We might need some gas and also some oil in the years to come, and then we will see, and then hydrogen and then nuclear energy. Well, actually, I disagree with Chico Testa in this case. Actually, not everything can be done all of a sudden, but the shift we can promote from now to over the next 8 years, so not by 2050, it's 2030. In the sector of electricity, we can shift from 35% renewable sources to 83% renewable sources, more than 80% anyway. This is our estimate, our forecast. It is an enormous quantity of energy produced thanks to renewable energy sources. It is a switch which we can do. It is not true that we import all panels from China, because we also import panels from other countries. And in particular, less than 2 months ago, it was mentioned that in Catania, in the south of Italy, the largest panel-producing factory owned by Enel will be created there. So a large quantity of panels will be produced in the south of Italy, and probably many other enterprises, companies producing panels will be established. We have talked about this with the Italian government, because what we need is structural investments to promote the production of panels or generators. In order for this to happen, of course, what we need is stability in the development plans for these technologies. There are always some regions that are against these plans, but as of today's date, we can also see that if they can, even private owners, individual citizens, decide to install solar panels. And this is happening from Florence to the south of Italy. People want to have their own TV antenna in order to have television programs, and the same applies to energy. This is something that is happening in the south of Italy, and as a matter of fact, in the first 2 months of the year, the solar panels have increased by 200% in Italy. One last question. In Europe, we do not want to completely exclude synthetic fuel, but there's going to be a transition towards electric cars. You know the numbers of the current network today. Now, of course, apart from the stations to recharge the electric cars, but when it comes to the power, well, I can see that in Milan, in the month of July, sometimes in some areas there are too many air conditioning devices on, and this might lead to the disconnection of energy, of electricity. Do you think that we're going to have a transition towards electric cars? Absolutely. In 2022, last year, the amount of consumption was 215 terawatt hours of electricity. According to our estimates, with the increase of use of electricity, pumps, induction plates, electric cars, even if we're going to improve the level of efficiency, of course, because we are more efficient every year. We're increasing our level of efficiency by 1% every year. So if we consider the same amount of energy consumed, we can we can use more light in a larger number of rooms, and we're going to consume 360 terawatts hour. So I think it is possible to achieve this target, and also power stations for the recharging of the car batteries will be installed, and it will be possible to have more cars, electric cars. Having a station, a power station, is not just like building a refinery, of course. And I'm deeply convinced that we're going to do that and have the sufficient number of recharging stations for electric cars. At the beginning, Italy is somewhat slow, but Italy is always able to reach the targets and sometimes go beyond the targets. Thank you very much, Agostino Rebaudengo. Roberto Sancinelli, President of Montello. It's not close to Rimini, but if you have time, go to Montello. Take a look to Montello, which is a company that recycles plastic, waste, etc. Shows us an idea, gives us an idea of what we are doing when it comes to waste collection, the correct waste collection, which is very important. You have developed a model according to which you are able to recover all the waste you receive. Can you give us some figures? I have this figure, 350,000 tons of plastic that you recover and 765,000 tons of organic waste. What do you do with this waste? Well, circular economy is not just about recycling waste, but also reusing sites that are not used any longer. And it is also about reusing and new professionalism. Up to 1996, our company was a steel producing company. We have stopped producing steel, and there's been a reconversion of the company, and now we are promoting recycling. Starting from 1996, when we changed our logo, this is the logo which we had on February the 1st, 1996. So, a company for recovery and recycling. So that was our intention, to have a company that did that. The term circular economy did not even exist at the beginning of the 1990s. We were precursors, in a way. Segregated waste collection started in the region of Lombardy in 1995, and that was an opportunity for us all. Actually, we started to work in Lombardy in order to solve the problem of the emergency context of waste, because the large landfills had been shut down, and we had an area to it was a site, we had a site to recycle the waste in our region. And most of the waste was shipped to Zurich in Switzerland at that time. So I could see all the waste that was transported to Zurich, and we said to ourselves, we are wasting an enormous amount of these materials. At that time, steel production was difficult. It was a situation of crisis. The costs were extremely high, and there were other countries that could produce at a lower cost. And so the idea was to stop producing steel and to promote the reconversion of our company. Now, it's easy to say that we have done that now, but it was not easy at the time. And so we started with the first plants to select different waste, segregated waste collection. We had 2 different ribbons that processed different types of waste, and we also were able to give a job to people coming from outside the European community. And then we had the first compost plant, and then slowly we started to think, introducing new technologies. We tested some new technologies ourselves, and we also purchased new technologies from outside suppliers, and we started slowly to become a company, an industry actually, a whole sector, because we had large volumes, because of course, if we want to be a strong company in our sector, it is important to have large volumes. Let's speak about technology and investments, because actually you are a company that collects waste material. So the first thing that comes to mind is old economy, not the latest technology. So when I was young, there were machines with optical recognition of different types of plastic, and with a high-pressure blow, they can isolate different types of plastic. But this is the past, right? Exactly. As a matter of fact, we have created the first optic detector by Montello, funded by Montello. And today, of course, these detectors are extremely efficient today, but the first one was made by us in Montello, in our company. And that was innovation, the beginning of innovation. A company needs innovation if it wants to grow. So these are some data, because this morning the Vice President of Confindustria said that Italy is leader in recycling in Europe. I confirm this, and we are #1 by a large extent. And the numbers that you see here, the figures, it's not just a free ad to the Montello company, but you can see the levels we have reached in Italy. Europe, by 2030, 2035, we reach probably 65% recycling percentage of plastic. And organic waste in Europe is not compulsory. It will become compulsory starting from January the 1st next year, 2024. So they have still not reached that. On the contrary, in Italy, we have reached 80% recycling. At Montello, 1 million tons every year of segregated waste collection. 80% of this is raw materials and waste products. Only 20% is recovered with energy. And it's not just our company, there are also other companies that promote recycling in Italy, that deal with recycling, that have reached exactly the same levels. Of course, we need to be recognized in Europe. At the moment, we see that there are those who would like to reconsider the whole system of packaging recovery, reusing packaging. Well, some packaging cannot be recovered. We are going backwards. When I was a child, there was no packaging at all. We had to use glass bottles, not plastic bottles. So if we consider all of this, it's not a good idea reusing certain types of packaging. Some packaging, yes, and I'll come back to this later on. But we cannot go backward. We have to move forward. Because transporting a bottle like this one of water, it takes something like 3 trucks of water. 3 trucks for the glass bottle, 1 truck for plastic bottle, for the transportation of the same amounts of water. So we have to be very careful. So, as I was saying before, these are the figures. Of course, we can improve. For instance, recycling activity is an energy-consuming activity. And today we know what the energy cost is. Over the past 3 years, this has been a source of concern, especially considering what has been going on over the past year and a half. But we are worried also for the future, when we look to the future. When all is said and done, if we speak of methane, methane is imported with boats, not with pipes, but still we depend on other countries when it comes to energy. Well, 1 more minute. Investments for the future. This is the current situation for Montello. Are you going to invest in the future? Well, first of all, we want to come full circle. That 20% that you see there will not be exported, transported outside of Italy, but we will recover that amount. And so this means that we will only have 5% for waste with the target of 2%, reducing that to 2%. And that will be yet another success for Italy. Other investments, of course, hydrogen. We have developed the technology when it comes to hydrogen, and I think that over the next 2 or 3 years we will be able to produce hydrogen, green hydrogen. And then we will start with green hydrogen, but then it could also be hydrogen produced starting from biomethane, because this is yet another renewable source of energy. We will see what the evolution of the rules will be. And finally, molecular recycling. There are those who call it chemical recycling. We call it molecular recycling. We are currently designing an industrial plant. We have already made the tests. The tests have been successful. We are planning the construction of a specific industrial plant for that. And then we are carefully examining something different, something new that looks to the future. Maybe the terminology might not be correct, but I think that the new frontier is what I call quantum science. If we really wanted to promote change, the moment has come to deal with quantum science, the concept of quantum science, because I really think that that could be the basis to completely change idea. Thank you very much, Roberto Sancinelli. And now let's move on to a different topic other than energy. Let's move on to another commodity, and we have discovered that it's not a commodity. Water. Sabine Stuiver, co-founder and chief marketing officer of Hydraloop. It is a company that has developed a mechanism to recover and recycle water in houses. So let's start from water.
A commodity. Now we are experiencing drought in Italy, in Europe. Is there a problem all over the world about water?
Yes. First of all, scusami, io parlo solo un po' italiano perché
Excuse me, I only speak very little Italian because I speak English most of the time.
I actually asked ChatGPT this morning, is there a global water crisis? And it said yes, it is. This scarcity has led to conflicts between nations, increased health risks, and exacerbation of poverty in many parts of the world. So it is already quite wise. I'm very glad to be a voice for water today. Water scarcity is a growing global crisis, and it's something that we have kind of forgotten about. We haven't seen it. I always say we've been in a carbon vision tunnel. Carbon is very important, but water is maybe even more important. It's a finite resource, and we can't live without. So I want to talk to you about the value of water, and also that, so we need many transitions, but we also need a blue transition. Because we have to face it, we are withdrawing more water from our planet that is being replenished by the hydrologic cycle. And we are actually facing, as I call it, a state of water bankruptcy. Just to give you a few numbers and statistics so you know how much water there is, because many people don't even know. If we go into space and we look on Earth, you see a lot of water. 70% of our Earth is actually water. But only 2.5% of that is actually fresh, which is on Earth. But most of that is actually captured in the ice and the North and the South Pole. So actually only less than 1% on our planet is the water that we humans and animals and our ecosystems can use. This is in the rivers, as snow on the mountains, and in our groundwater and aquifers. So it's not a hell of a lot. And we have the hydrologic cycle that has been changing now due to climate change. So we have longer periods of drought. So that is one cause of the water scarcity. The second one is a population growth. We're expecting 2 billion more people on the planet by 2050, and we all need water and can't live without. We will need 55% more water than we're using today if we don't use anything. And we already are in a drought. So those are already two issues with water scarcity. But the third one is actually a more important one, and that is what has been lagging. And we have had very inadequate decision making by policymakers, because we knew about climate change already decades ago. We knew about population growth, but we just haven't acted upon it. Now, water impacts everything and everyone. Just again, also so you know, of course, it's food security, it's health, it's energy security, it's peace, it's ecosystems. It's, you know, it is actually everything in our lives. And we are using 8 times more water now than we used 100 years ago. We all use in Europe about 125 liters of water per person per day inside our homes. And the deficit now is 40%. In 7 years' time, the World Economic Forum states that 50% of the world population will have an acute water stress. And by 2050, as I said, we will need 55% more water. Last year, Europe saw in 500 years the worst drought in Europe. And we've all, also here in Italy, but also in the Netherlands, in Poland, in Sweden, everywhere we are facing it. It's affecting our businesses, it's affecting people, it's affecting economies. And water has a very large carbon footprint. People don't understand. 3% of all energy used all over the world is used for pumping water around. Water is responsible for 10% of global emissions. And just to give you an idea, in the Middle East, they use 30% of their energy consumption for desalinating the water.
You have a proposal for a sort of smart society, circular society, also in the terms of the use of water. Can you give us a couple of details? How does it work?
Yeah, okay. Well, so a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of months ago, we were asked to go to the United Nations Water Conference by the Netherlands government. And we were thinking, okay, we can go there and we can present our products, which is, of course, very nice. But we have been experiencing within our company that the people that are making the decisions and having to make the decisions don't have the knowledge on what types of water there are and what we could be using in the built environment, and also what kind of solutions there are and what we could be using to be saving water, saving carbon, saving money, and to make sure that we will have a future for our children. So what we decided to do, we did this before in the Netherlands. We created a white paper with which we informed our government, and because they need to make the decisions, and they actually changed policy very quickly. And now, within the next 12 years, all people in the Netherlands will have to use 20% less water in the built environment. And we are still discussing how we're going to do that with the government at the moment. Is that going to be implemented by putting it in the building code or mandated, so every new construction may have to have water saving? Or are we going to do it with financial incentives for people and companies? Anyway, with that in mind, we decided to create such a document for all decision makers worldwide and all mayors and all people that are facing water scarcity. I have it here. It's called the Blueprint for a Circular Water Smart Society. And we presented this in New York. Very happy to present the first copy to our Dutch king. And actually, I just presented Letizia a copy as well. And we also organized a global expert group. And what we're doing basically, and that is very important, is everywhere we're finding that people are doing pilots again, and they're thinking about what are they going to do, but we don't have the time. We don't have the time to waste so much longer. And the solutions are here. Everything is here. So, but standards are lagging behind, laws are old-fashioned, so we have to learn from each other. So with the global expert group of circular water and with this document, what we're aiming is to share knowledge, to look at best practices, and to combine all that knowledge. And with that collaboration, and I think that is the key word today, we have to collaborate. We can make really impact that matters, and we can create a circular water smart society. So anybody who is interested, I'll take the stage now for that. Anybody interested to join this circular expert group, I'm open to welcome you to our group, and contact me, please. So together we can make impacts that matter.
We have just 1 minute. Are you happy with the conclusions of the World Conference? Because they did not come with an outcome, but just with some recommendation. Quindi questa conferenza mondiale delle Nazioni Unite che si tiene dopo 47 anni non ha trovato un testo condiviso.
So this global conference after 47 years didn't come to any conclusions. Some recommendations, shared ideas. Someone said excellent, historical, because nothing had been done for the last 47 years.
Did you ask me if I was happy with the outcome of the United Nations?
Yeah, with the outcome.
Well, basically, it was a shame that there were no, so we went into the meetings and we knew already that nothing was going to be, put in stone or on paper. What is very good is that at the next conference, the next COP, water will be a main topic, and it has to be a main topic. So I'm happy with that. And within the United Nations, there was a lot of talking about water, but what happened outside there, all the side events, that's where the action was.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Sabine Stuiver. Andiamo a Michele Viglianisi, responsabile del biorefining.
And now Michele Viglianisi, responsible of biorefining and the supply of ENI, sustainable mobility. So here we understand that when Europe accepts synthetic fuels and no to biofuels, Viglianisi is not a happy bunny. So can you tell us the reason why Europe is wrong, in your opinion?
Because it does not take into consideration a principle that has been mentioned by the vice presidents of Confindustria and also by the chairman Barzani. She quoted the Pope and she said, we can save ourselves only together. And this is not just a concept that concerns those who deal with energy transition, but it also concerns the use of the tools we have available. On top of transport, and there is also the civic use. The hard-to-abate sectors are responsible of 80% of the 37 gigatons of CO2 that the world emits every year in the atmosphere. If we want to reduce these emissions, we need all the tools we have available, none excluded. Of course, they have to be used in a smart way, enhancing their potential, and also considering the level of maturity. In a word, as the Deputy President said before, we need technology neutrality, which is something that we are neglecting today. Europe considers that biofuels are compulsory in order to decarbonize airplanes with the sustainable aviation fuel, which we have already started to produce, and we will increase this production up to 200,000 tons by next year, thanks to 2 investment projects at the refinery in Venice and Gela, 2 biorefineries which are already working. But on top of that, Europe is not going to use a tool which is not in competition with the electrification mentioned by Rebaudengo. It's not in competition with the maturation of the e-fuel because it's not a ready tool. E-fuel is promising, but it's not mature yet. It accompanies them both, in one case in the diffusion, in the second case in the progressive technology maturation, reaching the only target that is not winning a match between 2 different technologies, electricity or biofuels. Our objective is to reduce the emissions, as we mentioned before, and to pass on the planet to our children in the same conditions in which it has been entrusted to us by our fathers. The compromise reached by Germany, starting from 2035, is to use synthetic fuels. Do you believe that this is something that has been finally decided yet, or do you think they will change their mind? Because the European Commission has established a number of steps of analysis and market study from now to 2035. When it comes to light transport, we hope we will be able to explain the positive energy consequences, as I mentioned before, the integrated use of fuels as a mix of solutions, because they work according to the same principles as the e-fuels. through the oils for their production. They've already captured CO2 from the atmosphere through the plants. And this is done using a free-of-charge technology, that is photosynthesis. In the case of e-fuel, it has to be paid with an industrial process. This CO2 goes back to the atmosphere, and so the circuit is a virtuous circuit from the environmental viewpoint. There are technical and also ethical reasons to support the idea that you mentioned before. So, together with the other vectors, we should use biofuels. Biofuels are irreplaceable at all for those segments which cannot be electrified: sea transport, heavy transport, air transport. For an oil group that has worked and is still working on extraction of fossil fuels, what does it mean to promote decarbonization? This is your strategy, and this has been your strategy for a few years now. And you work in a sector that is more complex than others because you work with a material that is not coal, but it's oil, so CO2 emissions are there. What is your pathway then, and what is the state of the art? Well, we have to be guided by the North Star, that is technological innovation. We've spoken about that quite a lot, and technology innovation will transform the traditional processes of refining. It is a process which we started 10 years ago in Venice and then in Gela plant. We are saving jobs. We will strengthen the biorefineries that are already working. We've implemented some authorizations for other refineries. We have established joint ventures with the BPF, Sunburner Renewables, for purchasing a refinery in Louisiana. And we are planting a new refinery in Malaysia. This will allow us to increase the production of biofuels. We will grow with the production of renewable energy sources. We agree with Rebaudengo. Electricity from renewable sources must grow. It's a slow process, but we need to do that in order to reach the right quantities, in order to reach the targets. Up to 7 gigawatts of installed power, up to 60 by 2050. We will grow with varied sources of energy, with the diversification, non-edible oils coming from Africa, where they are produced on marginal desert areas, so not at all in competition with food, no risk of deforestation. These amounts of oils will grow so that they can cover the whole value chain. As I mentioned before, our biorefineries will also use waste. Since last year, they've become palm oil free. We use waste. This is our new oil. This is the plan we're going to accelerate with some intermediate steps, which will allow us to work at the right speed in order to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. So basically, you are getting ready in order to deal with a future in which probably we're not going to have gasoline without any problem at all, because you might have developed alternative fuel. So mobility, how is mobility going to be over the next 10 to 20 years? We want to cut the emissions of the processes, but also of the products, from the raw materials to the product of consumption. So we are focused on the consumers. They must be able to choose the tool that is the best one while they're moving in mobility, in order to contribute to the decarbonization according to their use, to contribute to the decarbonization of transport. In our mobility hubs, there will be green hydrogen, electricity, biofuels, etc., so that more and more the consumers will be the main actors to reduce the emissions that depend on the consumption of the product. All of this will be in our mobility hubs, that is our new service stations. So you don't think there's going to be just one priority source of energy? No, we will need a set of different sources according to technological neutrality. Okay, this is what ENI is doing. I'm not going to ask you your opinion about the confirmation of the managing director of ENI, Mr. Claudio Descalzi, but I'm sure that this is the strategy that has been promoted over the years. So this is kind of continuity. Thank you very much, Michele Viglianisi, Roberto Sancinelli, Cristina Bombassei, Sabine Stuiver.